Time for some more South African vineyard trivia. Did you know that Malbec is one of the top 10 most planted red cultivars in South Africa, even though it makes up less than 1% of the national vineyard? But just because there are less than 1,000 hectares across the entire country, that doesn't mean that some of our more premium winemakers aren't super excited about the sorts of elements that it can bring to our premium Bordeaux style red blends. In South Africa at least, our more premium winemakers are all terrified of having any overly herbal, leafy, stemmy elements in their Cabernet-based red blends. So for this reason, Malbec and a grape like Petit Verdot, I guess, are fairly juicy propositions, sometimes literally, because they can deliver really, really rich, juicy, ripe fruit, but they also are genetically predisposed to having lower levels of pyrazines. Pyrazines are a group of chemicals that are often linked to sensory notes like herbal or grassy or capsicum or green bell pepper or lemongrass, and they're found in fairly high levels in cultivars like Cabernet Sauvignon, Carmenere, Cabernet Franc, even Sauvignon Blanc. And really in red wines, you don't really want too many of those notes, which is why Malbec is such a great blending component. But the real reason we're talking about Malbec is because today's hand drink solo wine of the day is the Bloemendal Malbec, made from the estate of Bloemendal up in the Durbanville Hills, and the wine is vinified by the award-winning winemaker Andre Hanekom. Andre Hanekom is the cellar master of Bloemendal Estate, but he is also the man behind the D.A. Hanekom family wines range. Bloemendal as an estate is probably better known for its white wines. It has the uber premium Cedar Terras, which is an old vine Sauvignon Blanc bottling, and then it has the award-winning Kanonberg white blend, which is a Sauvignon Semillon blend. But because Andre Hanekom is such a Malbec nut, some of his influence has been rubbing off on Bloemendal's Malbec as well. We've discussed elsewhere how many of the best Malbec sites in South Africa are found in warmer regions so that they can ripen and deliver those rich, ripe fruits, but they also carry a slight level of elevation, which increases your diurnal range and just allows some of that sugar ripening to better align with phenolic ripening, so you get a better balanced, higher quality wine. The Bloemendal Malbec comes from a vineyard exactly like that. It's planted on a north-facing slope in the Durbanville Hills, which means it gets maximum sunlight exposure in the southern hemisphere, but it's also up at 220 meters above sea level, which not only gives better diurnal range, as we've hinted at, but it also puts it in a prime position to benefit from the cooling breezes that are coming in off the Atlantic Ocean down on Africa's southern tip. Incidentally, if you want to taste what real high altitude Malbec tastes like, then you should head down to Argentina, where all the world's most hippest street creddy Malbecs come from. The vineyards there carry solid elevation of between 1,500 meters and 3,000 meters above sea level. If you actually want to taste some of these Malbecs, then perhaps try and track down wines made with fruit from the Yakachuya vineyard, for example, which is planted at about 2,000 meters above sea level, and it's over 100 years old, planted in 1913. Or, to go even more extreme, you can try and track down Bodega Colomé's Altura Maxima Malbec, which is made with fruit from the Altura Maxima vineyard, planted at over 3,000 meters above sea level. But back to Bloemendal. One other thing that makes this wine really cool is that it can be directly compared to the Langrug Malbec by D.A. Hanekom family wines. The fruit for both of these wines comes from the same vineyard. They come from different rows and they're treated slightly differently in the vineyards and they're treated slightly differently in the cellar, but it's really cool, and it's a kind of little wine geek adventure to take the Bloemendal and the Langrug and drink them alongside one another to see that even though they come from the same site, there are a whole lot of other nodes of influence that really deliver quite different wines. And when we get into the glass and give this guy a sniff, well, the fact that this wine is matured in at least 20% new oak is quite prominent when we first sniff it. There's quite a moody, smoky nose. There's lots of notes of sort of smoked cedar and elements of roasted cocoa. But then after a quick decant, or if you put it into a nice big glass like this and let it sit for a bit, those spice and smoke notes fade a little, and what comes through are some really quite pretty blackberry, blueberry, blackcurrant, as well as a little touch of licorice. And when we give the wine a sip, well, on the palate we get a quite fascinating, almost Syrah-like entry that really blends ripe blackberry juice with some quite profound pepper. Although, of course, the acid level on this wine is a little bit lower than you might expect from a pepper-driven, cool climate Syrah. The tannins on the wine are still quite firm, but One must remember that at the time of tasting, this wine was only 4 years old, and it'll definitely silken up a little more over the next year or two. So that's all we have time for today, but if you enjoyed the video, then support us on Patreon and subscribe to the Hand Drink Solo YouTube channel, where we publish at least 6 videos each month talking about things like wine science, wine history, unusual cultivars, and some of the rising winemaking stars like Andre Hanekom coming out of the dynamic South African winelands.